Next up we have Ronin Kenny. Ronan is an architect slash designer and futurist working at the intersection of digital and physical design, where the virtual and real world combine. After graduating from architecture at UCD, he moved to New York to begin a transition from contemporary architecture to human-centered design for digital, virtual, and augmented reality. He's just moved back to Dublin, and he's working as an independent consultant. And his talk is called "Who Are the Architects of the Future?" So welcome, Ronan, everyone.
Hi, everyone. It's been 5 years since I was at one of these talks. I joined the IXTA that long ago, and it's really good to be back. So, John, ready to go? Thanks, John, for inviting me. So, like I said, I'm an architect slash designer, which is kind of like an actor slash model, but not as two-dimensional. And I want to talk about what it means to be an architect in the digital age. So architecture fits actually in the sphere of user experience design. Interaction design is over here, and it's really, there's a lot of architects who are becoming UX designers, and I think there's a lot of UX designers who aspire to do architecture too. And it's not that different. On the right we have the information architecture, and the left is how an architect designs. You start off with a diagram. You start off with sketches, you move into wireframe stage, and you plan it out in a kind of orthogonal way. And then you give it to developers, and they interpret it. The initial kind of user interface designs, they were trying to figure out how are we going to use computers, and they developed a system that actually relied kind of on physical interface. So the desktop was replicated, and that was the most successful system. Nowadays, we can work remotely, and we can actually work virtually. So the kind of office of the future might look like this, and I don't know if an architect was involved in this, probably not. But it's funny how Job Simulator is like one of the #1 apps when there's infinite possibilities. We also have augmented reality. You can use your phone and you can see virtual objects and even virtual architecture. And potentially in the future we might have AR glasses and we'll be able to inhabit virtual worlds here on Earth. Any fans of Rick and Morty in the house? So it's like, who decides what kind of world we want to live in? And, if there's infinite possibilities, what would you decide? What would you design? What kind of life would you choose to live? So who are the architects? Are they trained as traditional architects? Are they more like information architects? Do they need to understand both? What does it mean to be an architect? Is it only about buildings, or is it about virtual architecture too? And that's what I kind of want to get to in the next part. So on the left we have Norman Foster, the architect, who worked with Steve Jobs on the Apple campus. So hands up who has the bigger ego? Hands up for Steve Jobs. Yeah, you're probably right. Like, the Apple campus turned out to look a lot like an iPod, and I think I heard a little anecdote that in a design meeting that Steve Jobs, just in the middle of the presentation, or right after listening to all their amazing ideas, just got up on the board and just drew a circle, and that was the architecture. Google, on the other hand, have a more collaborative approach. They've hired Bjarke Ingels, who's one of the best storytellers in architecture of our time. Thomas Hederwick is a designer who actually started out as a product designer, and both of them collaborated on this campus on the left, which is very fluid and dynamic and changeable depending on the conditions, which you can probably go and view in Google Cardboard and 360 and virtual reality. And Google are really the pioneers of both physical and virtual architecture. There's Zuckerberg there. He's really enthusiastic about VR. He thinks it's the next big computational shift. On the right, this guy, Philip Rosedale, actually came up with and created Second Life, this whole virtual world. That was not a game. It's like a whole world that you can inhabit. There's no gravity. You can design your own architecture and live within it. And it's now available in VR too. And on the right is Google Tilt Brush, and it's really easy to create 3D objects. The tools are just becoming a lot easier now. So, are these the architects of our future? Are these guys, they're coming up with, trying to get us off the Earth as quickly as possible, it seems like. They're in a space race. So what kind of world are they designing for us? Turns out Elon Musk's, proposal for Mars looks a lot like Burning Man, which is not surprising. He actually is a regular attendee. Is anyone else here a burner? A couple. Well, I definitely recommend anyone go. It looks a little bit like this on the left, which is really kind of utopic. And has anyone seen the new Blade Runner? Yeah, well, it's a little bit dystopian. We don't want the left image turning into the right image. We have to be careful with how we design the future and artificial intelligence. So what I'm trying to get at is that the architects of now and the architects of the future are more like visionaries. That's what we think of when we say, you know, who's going to be the architect of the future. It's someone who has the vision and the power and the knowledge to execute it. One of my favorite designers / architects and futurists is Buckminster Fuller. And if you get a chance, you should take a look at this book, Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. It's basically like we're already living on a spaceship hurtling through the universe. So we just don't know how to control it yet. So we don't want to end up living on the Death Star. We want to envision the future of the Earth as well as the virtual world. And who are the architects of the future? It's all of you guys. Thank you.